Welcome to the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. If you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcast, please follow, hit the like button, or any subscribes. It really helps us with the algorithms. Santa Cruz Coffee Break is produced by the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum. All opinions are those of the speakers. We invite you to join us on the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF for more fun. Now, let's get on with this installment of Santa Cruz Coffee Break.
How you know who Garrison Keillor is, the Prairie Home Companion guy?
Yeah.
He early on, when he was a young writer, before the Prairie Home thing had happened, he left his writing notebook on a bus, and it was lost forever. And he just had been refining the stories that would become his career. But so he had to go back and rewrite these seminal stories for him. And at the time, he was devastated. But then in hindsight, he said that it actually made him a better writer because he already had it all thought out in his head. And then he had to go back and he had this opportunity to do a whole other revision on it and a whole other take on it with more perspective.
With that really great bit of inspiration, we'd like to welcome Nat Keefe from Hot Buttered Rum to the 66th broadcast of the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum podcast. I think I got it all in there. And welcome.
Oh, thank you.
It's a great way. That's a great way to start it. But I have to know something right off the bat. How do you get a gig? Giants with James Nash on the field. How do you get that?
Yeah, that was epic. We, we're buddies with Tim Flannery, the retired third base coach. He's a great musician as well. And, we'd done some shows together. And then at a certain point, I said, man, I would love to do the national anthem sometime. And so I just gave him a call and he's all, I'm on it. And like 30 minutes later, we get an email from the Giants. And then ever since then, we've done it every year. So we've probably done it 8 or 10 times now.
No, it's great.
And it's just a nice part of the year. And we go and, they give us like 10 seats right behind home plate. And, if you're considering the national anthem is like 2.5 minutes long, and then, these seats are probably worth like $300 each. That's a pretty good, per minute rate. And we're mostly just big Giants fans, so we do it no matter what.
Well, and that probably was that whole introduction to Taylor Swift that we said we weren't going to bring up in this podcast.
Don't bring up the Taylor Swift thing. I don't want to start any rumors. So
okay, we won't. Yeah. So Richard introduced this as Hot Buttered Rum, but you have 3 different projects on your website. Hot Buttered Rum being one, Beat Mowers is another, and then oh crap, brain went just then.
Maybe Lost Radio Drift is on there.
That's it. Lost Radio Drift. Yeah.
Oh, it's great to meet a Lost Radio Drift fan. We're actually a band. It's Joseph Tucker, who's a great guitarist. He was like California Bluegrass Association Bluegrass Guitarist of the Year and one of the great singers. And he's just an amazing guy. And then Katya Tucker is a great bass player. And we had this amazing trio, and we're overdue to get back together. We made an album in January of 2020, which is a real ill-fated time to release a record. And so we actually haven't even released the record yet. It's still sitting on a hard disk and it's all mixed and ready to go. So I don't know, maybe this is a little poke in the butt I needed to release that thing, but it's great. It's great. I love playing guitars with Joseph.
Yeah, I impressed with a picker on an H13.
Yeah, I know. And it's ever since I got this, I got one of your TR models. Man, I still love that H13, but I was thinking like, why was I playing an H13? Actually, I blame Richard Hoover. I met Richard Hoover 15 years ago at Winter Grass up in Tacoma. And he's like, hey, come play this. And I just fell in love with this H13. And then I wasn't even looking for a new guitar. And I'm not saying he put a hard sell on me, but the guitarists just sort of sell themselves. And I need one of these things. And then that's what I played in Hot Buttered Rum for like 10 years. And it's a great guitar, but it doesn't lend itself to the kind of like bluegrass and bluegrass adjacent stuff that I'm trying to play. And then I got this a year ago, and I'm like, oh, all these things are so much easier to play on here. It's just easier to get the sound that that we're going for.
Yeah, when that guitar just first popped up on screen, I'm like, wait, did he get the top refinished? What's that?
That's funny. No.
Well, I was wondering if there was a on the 13. I was wondering if that was a stick-on decal for the wear at the edge of the pickguard, and I know it's not.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah. There's some great wear. There's some great wear on that guitar.
I'm a fan of that, and I don't know. It might be sacrosanct to other people, but I'm into the Willie Nelson approach, and you just let it go.
No, it's nice to see a guitar. People worry so much about the price of things, but to see a guitar like that that's really just been played and loved it's great. I think that's fantastic. That's why
I'm not gonna resell these things. Like, no way. These are my cover guitars. Maybe I have other instruments that might come and go, but these guitars are forever.
There you go. So what are you working on these days? If you've got
man, I just finished 3 weeks of touring on and off with Hot Buttered Rum and Hot Buttered Rum Duo, and then Lefty Lucy. So I'll tell you about that. So Hot Buttered Rum, first of all, is in really good shape these days. We're about to celebrate our 25th year as a band, and
wow,
and it's amazing. It just kind of keeps on chugging, and we haven't gotten too famous or too rich, that's for sure. But then it also just like maintains this level where we sort of have to keep doing it, and I'm forever grateful that there are enough nice people in the world to support Hot Buttered Rum. But yeah, so we're doing real good. We what's up with us? We just kind of have this new thing going on. So our drummer, our original drummer, just came back to the band. He was our drummer for 8 years or something, and then he had to drop out to have babies, and then he just came back, and so it's like best friends rolling around the countryside together, and it's not always like that. I mean, even in Hot Buttered Rum, it's not always been like that. We've always been friends, but here it's really evenly dispersed friendship, if that makes sense. Like, all of us are really good friends with everybody else in the band, and so there's this cohesion and just this sense of fun and adventure. I mean, actually, all 5 guys who are in the band right now, we all like take vacations together, and all of our wives are friends, and all our children are friends. And so now when we get together, I mean, it feels a little bit more like that. I mean, we're also like driving and doing all the hard stuff of doing gigs, but I'm completely grateful for that. I'm not sure if I could do it I'm not sure if I could keep on doing it like we do it if there wasn't that element of friendship.
That's a wonderful thing.
Yeah, I don't take a second of that for granted.
Yeah. I'm sure that the audience sees that too.
I hope so. Yeah, we'll see.
I'm sure they do.
Yeah. And so our approach these days is to do the bluegrass part of things better, and make the quiet parts quieter. Like we'll strip it down to just like a duo and have Eric and me sing. Eric usually on the dobro and me on the guitar, and then us like singing our kind of duet brothers harmony stuff. And then, we'll strip it down to like more of a string band, and we try to do that really well. And then when we're doing our, drums and keys and dobro plugged into a tube amp kind of stuff, we're trying to do that really well. And but we're thinking of those more in like different lanes maybe than we used to. We used to we had aspirations of synergizing or synthesize, really synergizing all these different things into one grand thing. And I'd say it's more in different lanes these days. I think we're more reverent of tradition than when we were 26 years old, and that's appropriate, I think.
That's fascinating, because there's a real, I don't know, from what I see, a real resurgence in bluegrass.
Yeah.
And it's really great for the people that have been there, sitting there, beating it out for so long.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of a little morphing of the art form with what you're talking about. You're still trying to stay true to the thing. Are you guys working around one microphone, or is everything kind of amplified? And
we do. We're a very amplified band, and it's loud, and it's a dance party, and that's the primary go mode for Hot Buttered Rum. And then part of our show will break it down to either a duo. We often travel with an ear trumpet, large diaphragm condenser microphone, and we'll gather around that and do that. That's often been a really important part of our show. Or if the venue is small enough, 200 people or less, we'll sometimes just go completely acoustic on the lip of the stage. Or actually, it's even less about how many people there are. It's more like the acoustic space, and even more important, like how drunk everybody is, how drunk the audience is, and if they can handle a quiet moment. We always do that if it's logistically possible, because those are the magic moments. And I mean that's what I seek in seeing a music performance. Is I want everything stripped away, and I just want to see what's there at the center. And so yeah, we try to bring that.
That's awesome. It's always irritating to me when you have a smaller venue and you have talented musicians and you have a terrible sound system. I'd rather, kill the sound system, mm-hmm. make me work a little bit harder to hear the musicians, but hear the quality of their playing and the quality of their instruments, rather than the lack of quality of the amplification.
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy. Once you go amplified, you have to go all the way. I feel like, if you're gonna amplify, I mean, you need to have great speakers. You need to have great preamps going into the speakers, good quality signals coming from everything. And then, you need to have basically another member of the band working, someone who's not playing music, but a sound engineer who's like involved in how the band sounds, working the board, or else you can get yourself, or else you're just not going to be representing what you want to represent. And you might not even realize that on one night or a couple nights, but it could add up over years and years, and like, oh, I didn't even realize that we weren't conveying what I meant to convey. Does that make sense?
Being a live sound mixer in my somewhat checkered past, that was a very politically correct answer.
Oh yeah,
that was perfect.
Oh yeah,
because you really can, and I still see it. I still see it today, where people walk into a venue and the house guy, I gotta go walk my dog.
Okay.
No, I mean really, I do a lot of video, and I've been on the stage where, or in the house situation where the sound guy said to me, you can handle this, I got to go walk my dog.
Oh, I see.
Wait a minute, I'm running three cameras here, and I don't know what you did. I gotta walk my dog. Yeah, no, that was a very politically perfect.
I mean, sometimes you come across house engineers who are some of the most enlightened beings, where they, maybe they started off traveling and traveling didn't take to them, but they still want to, keep they're inspired to be part of that art form. But then there's other sound engineers who are at like the end of the road of something, and they've ended up in this situation, and yeah, it can get dark.
Unhappy. Dark fast.
What
Yeah,
about your projects? So I guess during COVID, I don't know if this was just during COVID, you did the beat mower um, stuff, which is a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
different. I mean, was that just a kind of a one-off, or is that something that you do in the background?
Well, let's explain to your listeners
Yes,
what happened. So during during the lockdown, we couldn't get a whole band together, um, and we were still continuing to play when it was possible. In little backyard get-togethers, open outdoor things. We would bring instruments into Golden Gate Park and sort of like convene in a dispersed kind of way, all that stuff. We were following the rules, but then also like giving the people what they want. But it wasn't possible to have a whole group enough to create music for dance music, right? I mean, you need a bass, a mandolin, a banjo, a fiddle, or you need drums and bass and key. You need like a bunch of people to do that. Wasn't particularly possible. So it kind of pressed me to get my electronic music thing going a bit more, which has always been a part of my mix. I've in college I did a bunch of kind of avant-garde electronic music stuff where I would go like record, like when I was in Ghana in 1999, I went around and I recorded everybody saying the same phrase in their different languages, because Ghana has like 50 different languages in it, which is crazy. And
wow.
And then I put together this what I hope was somewhat aesthetically pleasing sound collage of different people saying different things. Anyway, so I used to do more kind of avant-garde listening to music like that with electronics, but then I don't know. I would say I had an enlightening moment at like 4 a.m. at Burning Man in maybe 2008 or 2006, where I was dancing around the man, and there was this great electronic music playing, and I'm like, I could do that, and I had this vision for creating electronic music out of mostly acoustic sources, and use the electronic tools to manipulate acoustic sounds to create awesome dance music. And so that's always kind of been part of my MO. And then I would say that integrates with the other thread in my little story of involvement in West Africa. I've been to Ghana like 3 times. I'm in East Africa once, and very much into African music, very much into African traditional music and African drumming traditions. And I love how that music is put together. It's this relationship to polyrhythms, to lots of repeating rhythms that interact with each other in really sophisticated ways. And it's so sophisticated that it needs to happen again and again and again. And each time it happens, you go deeper into it. So it's sort of this cyclical approach to music that is different than the European approach. The European approach, European classical music is, one of the other brilliant traditions in music, but that it has a more linear approach. And it's, like most aspects of bluegrass music are part of that, where there's a chord progression. You start on the G chord, and then you go to the A minor chord, and then you go to the 5 chord, and then, oh my gosh, and then you're back to the 1, and it moves you forward in this little story. And so that's kind of linear oriented music. And then, cyclically oriented music, lots of repetition, sophisticated rhythms that you have to hear lots of times to understand and get deeper into. So, all right, so that's West Africa. Then we're back at Burning Man, 2008. And I have this vision for how I want to incorporate this like West African tradition with acoustic instruments and with electronic tools. And and then that idea has been sitting in my mind for a long time. But then the pandemic came along, and I really had this impetus to make it happen. And so I, got the right gear. I did a bunch of self-education and got my game going. And it's been so much fun. I love, love, love playing solo electronic music. And part of my stuff is in a more traditional DJ role where you're spinning other people's tracks. That's maybe half of what Beatmower is, and then the other half is original compositions, and it's stuff where I've recorded my friends, recorded people in Rwanda and Ghana and Zambia, and then also samples that I've found of various things all over the place. So all of that is to say, long-winded is that short story long is that that all happened during the pandemic, and it kind of allowed us to have dance parties. And so I would do Friday night streams, and this is after like a long week of pandemic lockdown, and my wife and I, at that point, we had a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old who were just like bouncing off the walls and like under socialized and under rompist, and it was a hard time for everybody. People with young kids, it was a very specific kind of hard time. But so it would come to be Friday night, and Aaron and I would like put on some nice clothes. We'd turn on the camera. I'd get the Beatmower thing going. We'd have a couple drinks. We'd turn on the disco light in our living room, and I'd play music, and we'd sort of get messages from friends, and it was a weird little kind of party. And then since the pandemic, then now I get all these offers to go and play Beatmower, and I've played Beatmower at festivals, like late night sets at festivals. Just for occasions, and it's no big deal for me to just come and bring a backpack full of gear. And I've done it for actually lots of money. People have offered me. I've made like more money in one day doing Beatmower than almost any other day, any other single day. I don't know, whatever. But you can get offered a lot of money. But then it's also really easy for me to just do it for free for friends, because it's like no big deal. You just like bring the thing and plug it in. So yeah, that's been a nice
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, and what you brought up about your trips to Africa. There is a flavoring to your music that to me has definitely an Afro or Afro-Caribbean kind of vibe to it. It's not overpowering. It's like just the perfect amount of spice, added to a really good meal that just makes you stop for a minute and go, ooh, that's a little different. I really like that.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm just obsessed with African diaspora music. And I mean, I think maybe if I could do an academic pursuit, maybe that'll happen later in life. I don't know. But an academic pursuit for me would be some kind of project, studying deeper all the fingers of the African diaspora. And we're talking about like the transatlantic slave trade. It's like one of the worst atrocities that happened in the history of humanity. And then but what it also did is it put in touch African culture with all these different European cultures and native cultures. And then they've just come together in all these interesting ways. And even with that kind of dark curtain behind it, it's endlessly fascinating stuff. And it's created all the most popular music in the world is some combination of African music and European music.
Right.
I mean, is there
it's absolutely fabulous, because with all the crap going on in the world right now, you've found this inspirational, unique route. It's not a flash. It's you're talking about the root, and that's where it grows.
It's really cool. And people, some of my friends in West Africa and to a certain extent in East Africa are very much aware of that, and it's cool. it's a cool thing. It inspires a lot of humility and perspective on, even what our life here in America is, and what it's built on. You can get a little high on your horse here, and I'm not the kind of person who is just always gonna poo-poo our past, or be too down on things. But at the same time, you got to be humble. You got to be humble.
Amazing that the ugliness of that whole thing turned into what it turned into in American music, and and really fascinating, just fascinating.
Well, it's interesting in the ways that it's developed even beyond, into all the latest hip hop and other types of music that I don't know if you could actually say there's any European influence on that. I think that's a uniquely American, African kind of entity, or I don't even know how to describe it, but it's very unique in my ear.
Yeah, harmony and chord progressions take even more of a backseat than they, much more than in rock and roll, and a lot less than in jazz.
So what was the motivation to start going for that? What was the motivation for Africa? I mean, it's not around the corner.
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I was 17, 18 years old, my mom went to Mali. My mom is a great musician, great harpsichordist. She's into Baroque music, early music. That's actually why they came to California. And she's a real keyboard whiz. And then she kind of retired from performing to have me and my sister, and then she got back into teaching later on. But anyway, all that is that she had this phase and this obsession with West African culture and music when I was about 17 years old, an impressionable youth. And so she was playing a lot of West African music around the house. And then I read one of the books that she had around the house. It was sort of a dry ethnomusicology book called African Rhythm and African Sensibility by John Chernoff. And it actually is the thing that inspired me to go to West Africa, and Ghana specifically. I won't get into all the details, but basically the gist of it is that the context of music is what it's all about, and that you have to be there to understand how something works. And it's actually that each music has its own social context that it takes place in. And after reading this book, like any kind of travel, it makes you think, makes the familiar strange and the strange familiar. And I'm like, oh, well, what are the sociological implications of bluegrass music that I'm playing right now? Or what is the social context of it? How do we put this together? And then because before that I would maybe just think about the technical stuff, or so anyway, that's about that. But then I was able to go and do a semester abroad during college in Ghana, and it took a little doing, but I found a way to do that. And then I got a grant from my college to go travel afterwards, and I recorded an album of field recordings and modern musicians playing new and traditional music. And then I made a movie. You can see that on the YouTube channel. It's pretty sweet. And then I made an album. And that was like, so when I graduated college, that was my focus. I thought that I would do something closer to that. But then this hot buttered rum thing just kind of took off, and then I haven't really been able to get off the train. Not that it's like a rip-roaringly fast train or anything. I sometimes wish it was a little more of a rip-roaringly fast train, but it's what I do.
Well, being able to stay together with the same musicians for 25 years, that's pretty special.
Yeah,
you know, there's
exactly.
got to be something really good happening there to keep people together for that long a time. I mean, the creative process can be really hard on a group of people trying to work together, and you know, that's why so many bands break up so quickly and so easily, and people float around as much as they do. So to hear that you found people that you've been able to just not only create but spend all your time with for that long. I mean,
Yeah.
My wife and I have talked about it a couple of times, and of all the people we know, there's only two of us that are still married after 20 years. You know, everybody else on second or third wives, and you know, they just can't make it work. And I think it's even harder on musicians because it's a whole different kind of relationship.
Mm-hmm. And it's sometimes, yeah, maybe even more multifaceted. I don't know. It's probably similar to a marriage, just that there's, you know, you're spending your time together. You have sort of, you know, a creative act you do together. There's like money and logistics. I mean, it's all the things that, you know, all these opportunities for conflict.
Yeah. Well, then it gets more so when you have 5 people involved rather than just 2.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I want to go deeper on root here. So, where does bluegrass come in?
Oh, I see bluegrass as being one of the great.
Yeah,
one of the great.
What brought you to bluegrass from West Africa? I mean,
oh well, I was in bluegrass before that. My dad is like a parking lot picker, and he's a great singer, a great songwriter. You know, plays guitar and mandolin, and has a love of, you know, living room music. You know, playing music with his buddies in the living room, playing. You know, and he took me to the California Bluegrass Festival, which I think became Grass Valley Festival. Is that right? Mm-hmm. And he took me. I mean, when I was a young boy, I remember seeing, you know, Doyle Lawson play, and God, who else did we see? We saw Hot Rise play, and there's always bluegrass around the house, and he has this big vinyl record collection that I've inherited with all the Ralph Stanley stuff, and then he was also you know, a 60s rocker guy too, and so I got all the Beatles and all the Rolling Stones. And
what an amazing musical family. Your mother was a harpsichordist coming from a very, I assume, a very classical European background, and your dad is into bluegrass and rock. I mean, that's awesome.
Yeah.
When did you start playing?
Oh, when I'd always kind of played a little bit, but you know, in earnest at like age 10, something like that. And at first I wanted to play bass because Paul Simon Graceland had just come out, and I loved the bass playing on that. But then they, you know, all the adults in my life convinced me to play guitar first. But then I went back to bass. In high school, I was like the bassist in the jazz band, and you know, that was my thing, upright bass. But then when I was traveling at age 20, I took a semester off of college and like traveled through Asia, and I was just going around with the guitar, and I'm like, this is my lane. I need to like sing and you know, be able to lead things, and you know, some of those moments of kind of being in a little guest house in the Himalayas with, you know, a family of Nepalis there, and then, you know, no one speaks any English, or just like very broken English, and we don't speak Nepali, and you know, playing, you know, finding music that could connect with other people was so much fun. And it really set the course for a lot of things after that.
So I've got this image in my head of you in the Himalayas in a little cabin or house of some kind, playing bluegrass standards for Nepalese farmers and people. It's
That's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to let that sink in a little bit.
Well, and the thing is, the guitar and the singing was part of it, but the real banger was that my buddy, who is really not a noted dancer, he would dance, and people would be like, "Wow, you are doing the dances of your country. Thank you for sharing the dances of your country." And word got out up the valley that we were hiking up. We're like hiking up this long Himalayan valley for days and days. And like as we were getting higher and higher, people would come down and say, "Oh, please come and stay at our place. We've heard that you guys are the famous dancer and the guitarist." And yeah, and we're like, "Wow, this is great. This is what I want. This is so much fun." And then it opens up the opportunity to have a real cultural exchange. It's not just us going and like looking at the beautiful things and just enjoying the exoticism. You can kind of break through that and make a real connection, at least about something with someone else. And that's a special thing. I think all of us who are into music have a version of that we've enjoyed. I mean, it's a real special thing about music.
That's an awesome way to open doors. That's really incredible.
I was going to say that's pretty obviously the Taylor Swift attraction too.
Exactly. Let's not let that rumor go any further.
Travis is a big guy.
What?
You. Yeah.
Well, I still want to hear about the radio project.
Dig in.
Lost Radio Drift. Well,
yeah.
So then we had the pandemic, and then Joseph and Katya had a baby, and then they just had another baby. So the idea was to release the album and then do a string of shows, and we haven't done that. But I still see them. I saw Joseph actually on Sunday, and we're all good buddies. But you know what? Joseph is going to be part of my holiday show that I put on every year at the Independent. It's called the Nat Keefe Concert Carnival. And it's this variety show that I've been putting on at the Indy this will be the 18th year, believe it or not.
Wow.
And I always invite, 20 musicians, something like that. And then I organize it a lot. It's very well organized, but then there's a lot of flexibility too. That's how I generally like to run things in life. And so Joseph is gonna be part of it. Let's see who else is going to be there. A bunch of AJ Lee's band, Blue Summit, is going to be there. Elliot Peck is going to be there. We're going to bring my Burning Man project, Field of Flowers, there. I haven't talked about this yet. This year, I was part of this amazing art installation at Burning Man. It's like deep playa, like out in the open part of the desert. And you walk into this space, and there's 160 4-foot flowers that are made out of silicone and PVC piping, but they're like beautifully crafted. And inside of each flower are like hundreds of LED lights. Then each flower has a battery and a little mini computer chip and a speaker. So it's 160 speakers. And I was in charge of the music. I was definitely not in charge of any other technical aspect of it, but I was in charge of the music, and it was like quite a challenge to figure out how you work with 160 speakers, and we wanted to create this certain mood. It wasn't like party time mood. It was like, let's slow things down, and the result was pretty dazzling. Anyway, that's going to be at the Concert Carnival. And there's going to be a film premiere, and a friend of mine is going to do her femme fatale as sort of a clown act, and she's going to teach the art of French love making at the show. She's from France, and she's this amazing actress. And anyway, that's that. But Joseph is going to be there. Maybe we'll do some Lost Radio Drift stuff.
You have some dates for that?
December 17 at the Independent in San Francisco.
Excellent. We'll make sure to include a link to that for people who are in the San Francisco Bay Area. That sounds quite amazing.
Oh,
and
cool.
then the only other thing I read about it was, what do you have against four chords?
What's that? Oh, wait. Are you talking about the actually strictly bluegrass rules?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. These are not my rules. These are Yosef's. It's Yosef. Yeah. Yeah. So, when there was the there's Hardly Strictly Bluegrass that happens in San Francisco every year, of course. Great festival, great civic institution. We all love it and respect it. The Yosef and some of my more bluegrass oriented friends, they started having actually strictly bluegrass parties, like the night of Hardly Strictly. And there were rules. Like the first rule was no craft beer.
Yeah, I saw
I
that.
really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. God, what were the other rules? I think four chords were allowed, but only under certain circumstances.
Okay.
There was a no dobro rule that was controversial. It's because I don't know. I think dobros came into the picture of the bluegrass story a little bit later. I mean, it's all hilarious, but you go in there, you try to kind of stick to the rules and.
Well, that's what I read through the rules, and most of them made a fair amount of sense. But when I read no four chords, I'm like, well, wait a minute, what they got against the four chord?
I mean, you got to go way back. If it's just like ones and fives, you're like more on the old time bluegrass music divide a bit more. But I personally, I'm open to four chords. Talk to Yosef about
that. Yeah. Them youngins with them four chords.
Exactly. No craft beer. I can get behind that though.
I don't know. In San Francisco, it may be hard to find a lot besides craft beer. So
exactly.
It's not kind of a Bud Light center of the world.
Well, so how are things at Santa Cruz these days? Seems like Santa Cruz Guitars is just crushing it. Like everybody wants to. I mean, I go around the country with this thing, and people are, very covetous. And I mean, Santa Cruz has a really, really good reputation.
Yeah, it's Tad's quite a large procurer of them, but they're getting ready for some stuff for NAMM. That actually the last podcast we did was with a wood supplier that is reintroducing a tone wood. It's bald cypress. It's been extinct, and they found a kind of a small little clearing of it, but it's all salvaged. And then there's some pretty special top stuff coming out. I think this one bald cypress is going to top $100,000.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wait, for the guitar?
Yeah.
Whoa!
Yeah. Yeah. We've gotten a little bit of spattering here and there, and I haven't seen Richard for about a month to get any more information, but. There's apparently going to be four guitars that will stop people cold.
Wow. Oh my gosh. I hope I get to play one of those. That is so exciting.
Yeah. I guess they're in the process of some display cabinets for them and that right now. I did play one of the New Zealand sunken cypress tops, and the wood's green.
Wow.
I mean, when you see it's been in the water so long and it's so aged that it's green. The grain pattern, what was some of the grain patterns they were talking about, Tad? Like 50 to 60 per inch, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, which just means that it grew a very little bit for a long time.
Yeah,
So
for really, like stuff that we see now is like 3 or 4
Mhm.
maybe rings an inch, and again, Richard and his dedication to reclaimed materials and to redone. They have a log that floated down the San Lorenzo that ended up at the mouth of the San Lorenzo there in Santa Cruz, and they ended up with a pretty good chunk of that
Mm.
for tops, for redwood tops. So there's, and I've seen pictures of that wood, and it's unbelievable. It and you can only imagine how that guitar is going to sound. I
Yeah.
mean, they're not making the Martin 100-year anniversary thing with a 45-pound guitar. They're going to make something that's going to be very, very playable, and hope it goes to the right hands. But I guess NAMM's going to be pretty amazing. Richard's doing some things right now that are really revolutionary, and I think are, boy, if you could get the Medal of Freedom for guitar building, there's not a golden era. We're in the golden era right now.
Yeah.
Everything they're making is stunning. Just, I don't know how they do it, because you'd think there'd be some duds.
Well, because and it goes beyond artistry and craftsmanship. There's so many practical concerns about sourcing and having having the right people there and running this big shop, and then not to mention like marketing and making sure you're selling the things, making sure you're profitable enough, making sure you got all the right people on board. I mean, it's a huge operation, and sometimes the people who are brilliant enough to be the craftsperson aren't brilliant enough to run the company, or find the right people to run the parts of the company that they can't,
Or have a vision for where the company's going.
yeah.
I mean, he's looking down the road, and a lot of things like, okay, everything will be okay when I finish this guitar or something like that. And he's looking down the road to how they can bring this more into the industry, and how they can from his wood stash, how they can supply that for other people, and pretty much guarantee that they're going to get an unbelievable sounding guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Which has always been the custom yin yang. I'm gonna have a custom guitar made, and it's gonna be exactly what I want. And sometimes they come, and sometimes they're duds. And then it's custom. It probably happens more in the electric world than it does in the acoustic world. But
Yeah, I with my guitars, I guess with the H13, I wanted it to be a 14 fret instead of a 13 fret H13.
Mhm.
And so I had to customize it that way. And then Richard had a few ideas about how to do the bracing a little bit different. And that guitar just turned out brilliantly. I mean, I couldn't be more happy. This one, I got it completely stock, exactly the way that Richard and Tony Rice wanted it. And
Oh.
I feel like
Sunburst. You got a sunburst top.
I got a sunburst. That's a little bit off script, but I think everything else. Yeah.
Well, the H model has always been really great, and in the past they have made them 12 fret and 14 fret. In fact, I have 2 H's, and they're both 14 fret.
Nice.
And yeah, I agree with you. It's just a wonderful, wonderful size and shape and feel of guitar. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't recommend it for a bluegrass situation. For a lot of other things, it's nice, but yeah, not bluegrass.
Yeah. I always felt like the H13 worked well for me, like with the smaller body, playing in loud situations with drums and whatnot. There was a little less banging around of the sound inside the sound hole. It always just felt like it was compact, and I could deliver this good solid sound out of it again and again. And we're,
You did. You did.
oh, good.
You did deliver. Electronics in that. What do you have in there?
Well, this is my off script stuff here. I'll show you here. I've got three different pickups. So the first is an LR Baggs Lyric, which is a internal mic, and I really could not recommend that more. It is so great. It sounded great. I have it on 3 different guitars. I have it on the H13, and then I have it on my Beater Martin, and it's such a good pickup, or such a good internal mic. And then I've got a K&K in there that is pretty darn good. I end up using it a good amount of time. And then I've got this Sunrise magnetic pickup. And, depending on the situation I'm in, if I'm playing like a duo gig with Eric at the Freight and Salvage, then I'll use just the Lyric. If I'm, plugging into an amplifier and, playing with a jam band, I'll use just the Sunrise. But then most of the time I use a combination of 2 of them. And I've got a Felix preamp. Have you ever seen those, where you can mix 2 different sounds, and it's got all the right knobs? It's a really, really good piece of electronics. Pretty much everybody has them these days, all the cool kids. And so I use that. And I mean, when we started off 20 years ago, there were not the electronics and there were not the pickups like this. There have been so many material improvements in how to do things. So you can just deliver such a better acoustic tone under more circumstances than you could 20 years ago.
That's great. Thanks for that information. I'm sure a lot of times, sometimes that's secret stuff, and thanks for sharing that.
Oh yeah.
All those wires hanging out the back of the guitar.
Totally. Well, what I found is that, like, a lot of people used to use stereo input jacks. It's like a tip ring sleeve thing, and then you have, so you have like one jack here, and then you attach one pickup to the tip and one to the ring, or is it the sleeve, and then one is the ground. And then that single cord goes out, and then it splits into 2 things. You plug it into 2 different things. And, it's an expensive cord. It's a cord that breaks. Sometimes the tip ring sleeve connection is tenuous. So ever since I went to just having separate jacks, and, so what if you have 2 1/4-inch cables coming out? It doesn't matter. I buy these cables where it's 2 1/4-inch that are attached to each other. And then, and then they just come apart. And so it's basically one cable, but then it just splits right before I plug it in. And it just makes it so much easier. It's so much easier. Yeah, it took me a long time to figure that out.
Simplicity. I can't thank you enough for your time.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Really, love talking to you guys.
Really interesting. Some wonderful insights. One thing that really comes out of these podcasts, and when we find out people's kind of where things come from, your musical family. Wow, how great!
Yeah. Well, now I'm gonna go back and watch some of your other podcasts now. I'd love to see the Happy Trom one. And did you get James on there too? Have you done this with James?
Yeah, we did it with James.
It's a good interview.
Yeah, James has promised to come back. There's Brandon Lee Adams. I don't know if you know who he is. He was he seems to be like a Tony, and he's got a PBS show on Virginia Bluegrass on Virginia PBS, and they were nominated for an Emmy this year. He's in his second season of production, but it's just like him and John McEwen sitting around in his house. He restored a house in Virginia, and he's kind of using that as the set. And especially follow his work. Colossi, this absolutely crazy bluegrass picker, a Winfielder in Italy. And
wow.
this guy plays with his son on trumpet.
Okay.
So, a ton of fun,
Great.
just a ton of fun. But we really appreciate your time. I'm sure Richard and Josh do as well. And thanks very much. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, you bet. I appreciate you guys being prepared with some good questions and being open to talking, and this is a lot of fun.
Great. It was great talking to you. Check out the podcast we did with James May. Check out his Ultratonic pickup. You may want to upgrade that K&K a bit. You'd be amazed. You'd be amazed at what it could be.
Okay, yeah. Okay, we'll do James May.
Yeah, it's Tone Dexter is kind of his product. I'm sure you've encountered those in a few situations.
Cool.
But
we'll do.
But yeah, we try to give everybody a voice, and we really appreciate yours. So
I have a feeling we're going to have a long list of credits at the end of this podcast to link all these various projects. But we're glad you were able to talk about them. And December 17th, I think I'll look forward to that.
Good. Yeah. Come on up. We'd love to have you.
We hope you enjoyed this installment of the Santa Cruz Coffee Break. For more music-related fun, please join the Santa Cruz Guitar Players Forum at SCGCPF or SantaCruzGuitarPlayers.com. If you have any questions or possible podcast topics, please contact us. If you have a product or service that you feel would be of value to our listeners, please consider adding your support and keeping the coffee pot on. Contact us for more information. We ask that you hit the like, follow, bell, or bookmark buttons so we can keep you informed of upcoming podcast episodes. We hope you enjoyed Santa Cruz Coffee Break. Now it's time to go play your guitar.